Alright, welcome back to Becky Amy Horse Training, and this is LR Rowdybluehancock. He was originally purchased by Ben Bainbridge through the Blue Valentine and Driftwood Heritage Production Sale of 2021, and he is a 2-year-old gelding this year, and he was brought back to me to be started. This is ride number 11 for him. Not anything in particular that, reason why I was just trying to video him on ride number 11. It just happened to be that I was able to get good quality video on this ride, and so I thought I'd share it with everybody. Just wanted to show you guys where he's at right now in his curriculum and how he's doing. And this colt's a really, really big colt. He's by probably the biggest stud here on the ranch, one we call Big Joe. J.M. Rowdy Blue Hayes, I believe is his name, and his mom is a daughter of Review Hancock, and she is one of the biggest mares on the place. We call her Maudie, and she always raises a great big stand-up colt, and we usually refer to her babies as Hightower. They're so big. And this guy is no exception. And the reason, he needed to be this big is his owner is 6'6", probably 240 pounds, and kind of a big guy, so needed a great big horse to pack him. So he brought Otis back to me to be started, and just to get the basic curriculum going, get him kind of in the swing of things, teach him some work ethic, and teach him some of the basic handle that I do on these horses. And just wanted to share kind of what we've been doing and how it's been going. He's been getting some rides out as well as in the arena. We haven't been sticking just to the arena. This is one of those kind of colts that we have to ride mostly out to teach him how to get going forward and get straight. And it's, he hasn't been an exception. We go out, we get good forward, we get good straight lines, and then we come back into the arena and work on our basic handle, stops, rolls, picking up correct leads, turns on the forehand, stop and back up. And like I said, all I wanted to do was really show kind of where his progress is right now and how he's coming along. He's doing really good, about where I normally expect them to be about on ride 11. I apologize if there's some glitches in the video up front. I was using the Pivo to video this, and it kind of has to be a perfect day out there in order for the Pivo to get everything. Sometimes it doesn't zoom in as much as I would like it to, and I have to crop the video just a little bit to get everything. And then also there was a couple times where it lost me, so we're going to lose a little tiny bit of video here, but it's not that bad. I promise you guys. It's only a couple, like maybe a couple minutes of video that we lose, where I had to get the Pivo to connect back to me again. So one of the things that I find I have to do with these great big tall stretchy horses like this is I gotta get control of their shoulders, and I do that by actually kicking the hind end around when I'm steering them. And you can't see it so much in this video because it happens early on in their rides. I mean, it happens on ride like 3 and 4. Next time I get a great big tall horse like this in, and with a long body like this, I'll have to get somebody to video me and show you exactly what I'm talking about. But when I turn that head, like say to the right, and they're not really following their nose to the right, and like say the shoulders kind of still going to the left, you're pulling the rein to go one direction and the body's going the other. I find that if I take my inside leg and push back on that, back towards the flank, back towards the hip, I find that I can square them up and steer them out of it. And once I get that, then I can start getting control over more parts and pieces of the body, because ultimately that's what we're looking for, is trying to get control of this horse's body, right? And basic circles, basic squares, basic bending, not just kind of falling in, when you change direction with them and whatnot. So I'm pretty happy with the fact that I'm starting to get him to work off of his hind end, because when you have this stretchy of a body on a horse, it works very much like a pendulum, where like when you start to turn that front end, the hind end will swing around to balance itself. And you have to teach them, no, I need that hind end to stay right in place where it's at. And it's tough with these great big guys. They're not little cutters. They're not little reining horses. they can't just curl up into a little ball and turn around. And so just teaching them some of the basics of rocking that weight back on that hind end and then pivoting on the hind foot. And this is a really slow process. See how clean he was through that roll right there. That's ultimately what I'm looking for at this point on a horse this size with this level of balance. You have to remember, he's like that big teenage kid in high school that was kind of awkward, and they don't really know how to control their body yet. And it's not until, like, say, they get into college and they start playing college baseball, college football, college basketball that they start to get control of all their faculties. And Otis is no exception. He's learning how to get control of all of his body parts. And we can't get mad at him if he doesn't necessarily, follow through completely one way or the other. We have to recognize the try on these big guys. And with this particular pedigree specifically, we really have to recognize the try because they'll get crabby. They get crabby in the arena. They're made to be big, riding out kind of horses. And they're meant to go forward and cover some miles. And so when you get them inside like this, you lose your forward motion and you lose the ambition and their will to kind of, just be happy and move out. And so you have to really recognize the try when they try for you and make sure you have a really good release point every single time when you're releasing them, because that's how they learn, right? They learn when you release the pressure. So we're starting to add some 360s. He's not quite planting it, but he is making a smaller circle with that hind end than he is with the front end. And then we're moving off back into the trot again. He's staying relatively close to the arena rail, holding his perimeter well, not falling in. I'm pretty happy with all of this so far. So after I start to get them to square up, follow their nose, I start working on counterbend. And this might seem a little bit premature to some, but I'm finding that the faster that I can teach a colt counterbend lately, the better and faster everything else comes to them. And so this is going to look like I'm not getting anything done here, to be honest, you guys. A lot of trot circles, and you're going to see me trying to cross my reins across his body, trying to counterbend. And with him, the biggest problem is keeping that forward motion and then getting just one little step over the front end. And I find with these bigger guys, it's easier if I can do it trotting. Like right there, we see him just trying to take his nose to the outside and, push that shoulder to the inside there. I'm getting it pretty good to the right, but I'm not getting it very good to the left yet. And I'm only getting a couple strides. And like with this guy, especially, if I release the pressure as soon as he gets it, he's got it. He's got it figured out, especially if he doesn't have to work, right? But normally this is an exercise that I think people wait a little bit longer to work on with horses, with colts. But I find that if I start teaching this way early on in their training, especially on these big guys like this, everything else comes so much easier to me. And so, if you guys aren't really sure what I'm working on, I do have other videos that are on counterbend, because it's really hard to tell with this guy. There it is right there. You see a little bit come across there as he's making a right circle, and you see the head elevate just a little bit. I have to spank him with my sticks to keep him going forward. Again, forward is not a strong point on these big horses when you're inside. If I went out and did this in the pasture, I don't think I'd have a problem with forward motion at all. But at the time when I made this video, our hay pasture was pretty tall with hay and it wasn't freshly cut. I could probably go out there now that it's been cut and work on this without a problem, and I'd get better forward. But you see me kind of trying to manipulate that head and those shoulders, and I'm kicking. I don't have spurs on. I'm not sure I'm going to go to spurs on this colt. I'll have to discuss with his owner a little bit more about using spurs on him and what he would like me to use on him. And then, and for what he's going to be trained for, he may not ever need them. You know what I mean? So again, I apologize for the Pivo glitching and missing us sometimes. Anytime I go straight towards the camera or straight away from it, it kind of will lose us. And so I do a little bit more of this. And, and this does help with collection. It helps with balance in the circles, and we get to kind of see how reasonable Otis is going to be, because some horses get really crabby when you work on this stuff and they don't understand it, and they get mad when you're driving them forward but you're taking a hold of their face at the same exact time. And Otis is a pretty good sport about it. He's like, I don't really necessarily understand what you want, but I'll try to figure it out. Oh, and on a side note, if you guys notice the blue boots that he's wearing, you see me pushing pretty hard here and kicking on him pretty hard to try to get it. Every once in a while, I'll use my reins to smack on his shoulder to get him to move that front end over a little bit too. And, okay, and this lope off here, I think this horse is super, super talented, and he doesn't even know it. The way that he just loped off, super collected, super, great impulsion like that, all on his own, that's telling me this horse has so much promise. There's so much talent there and athletic ability that hasn't even been tapped into yet. And it just goes to show you, these horses are super, super late maturing horses. Where like a cutter or a reiner, they're just spinning around and they're getting their butts in the ground and they're doing flying lead changes and all the things. And these big guys are like barely making a circle, right? And this guy loped off like he did, like it was no big deal. He thought I was asking him for a lope. And there again, he thought I was asking him for a lope again. He picked up wrong lead. It's okay. No big deal. We'll go back to what we're working on. So back to the fly boots. Those are fly boots. And at this time of year when the bugs are this bad, I just leave the boots on when I'm working these horses. It's better than, spending a bunch of money on fly spray. And they're a lot more comfortable. And these boots are pretty sturdy. And they last, through at least one season, if not 2 seasons. So I'm going to go ahead and quit right there with that and let him walk out, let him play game over, try to leave him alone for a second before I move on to the next thing. So I go ahead and let him walk and cool himself out, play game over, cruise around on a long loose rein. The Pivo lost me there for a second, and this was just kind of a lot of walking, so I figured I could cut that out of the video anyway. But one thing I want to point out is, if you guys haven't noticed, I've had some horses that are really pretty scared of this far end of the arena, and Otis pretty much has no problem trotting down to the far end of the arena. He is super confident. He doesn't really care about anything. And, the most he's concerned about is getting bit by flies. And every once in a while, you'll see him shake his head, swish his tail, try to reach around and get a fly on his flank or something. And that's just the bugs. The bugs are really bad and they're really tough this time of year. I think he's kind of being pretty stoic on this particular day. It's not fun out there in the middle of fly season trying to work these colts. So we're going to do some loping. Picks up a real nice lope for me. Pivo got a little bit behind us here. But what I'm trying to show is that he's not taking the whole arena to just lope a circle. He's not balancing on the rail. I am having to push him pretty hard to keep him going, and he's looking for stop. And, in the previous ride, I really taught him stop, and he learned what that was all about. He learned that it was a time to rest. So he's looking for stop, and I'll take a horse that's looking for stop any day of the week. This guy now, he's gotten to the point where if I just exhale just right, he's like, oh, does that mean stop? And so when you see him slow down when he's loping or trotting and he breaks down to the next gear, that's usually because I've exhaled and he thinks that means to stop. So that's okay. We'll take it. We take the wrong lead there for a second. No big deal. Break him down. Start him back up again. Just a misunderstanding. Cross wire on the cues. No big deal at this point in the game. We're not being judged. We just want him to take a lope, right? We want him to take a lope, and ideally we'd like him to take a lope on the correct lead. And we're not making a big deal about it. We make a big deal about it on any horse, but a horse like this, it's going to be a problem. We're going to make it a problem. It's not a problem until we make it a problem, right? So just leave him alone and let him do his thing. Again, we're loping around really pretty here without using the rail to balance ourselves. And the Pivo loses us right here, and I was kind of bummed out. as I was coming around, he was looking for stop, and I'm like, no, you got to keep going, buddy. And we go to take a lope again. He picks up wrong lead for me, and I can tell when he does this, I can tell he's just flat tired. He's getting tired, so I know I'm going to have to call it quits here pretty quickly. So I've got a nice lope going, and I'm going to set him down in a pretty hard stop here, and I'm going to use that kind of tired, played-out horse to my advantage, and I would encourage all of you to do the same. So I barely exhale. I tell him easy and whoa, and this sucker gets his butt in the ground. And when they get in the ground and stop for you like this, you leave them alone. You don't ask for another maneuver. You don't ask them to back up. You don't ask them to walk forward again. You just stand there. Look at how collected he wants to stand here. We got this long, stretchy body horse that wants to stand there with his hind end up underneath him. He's ready to go whatever direction I need him to go in. And I just dropped my reins. I'm leaving him alone. Not going to ask anything of him, because you know what? If you ask something of him right now, you're going to screw up your stop. You're going to break your stop. So, and I've broke my stop enough times to know better. I'm asking him for a backup. He's a little stiff in his backup. I'd like to get him softer in this. That's just going to come with time. That's a time and practice. They don't just magically soften up and back up for you. And I'm not one to bang and cling on their face. It's got to come from behind. They got to soften in their hind end. They got to soften in their rib cage. They got to soften in their pole and in their neck in order to get a nice backup. Again, just be patient. It'll come. So he's like, okay, why are we walking off? I'm like, I need you to walk off, buddy. He's like, I thought we were done. Because if you do the stop right, they're like, we're good. I'm done. Game over. So we're gonna play a little game over here, but we're gonna go again. We're gonna work just a little bit more here. Walk him off. Play game over. Long loose rein. He understands that when we're on a long loose rein, he better catch his breath. He better pay attention, because when I gather up those reins again, we're going back to work, and you better get your mind focused and get right, because we're going back to work again. Again, fighting flies a little bit. But he's a good sport about it. This is the last ride I had in the arena on him for a few days. He's been riding mostly out again, and I'll just come back and forth into the arena every once in a while. Otherwise, I will break my toy. If I just keep on taking this horse to the arena, he's going to get burnt out and fried. Again, he rides down to the other end of the arena super quietly, no big deal, isn't spooked by anything. I sure appreciate this, because one of my personal horses spooks pretty bad over here. Well, it's Shooter. You know, if you guys have been following Shooter, Shooter will spook at monsters down at this end of the arena. So I'll get ready to pick him back up here and make him work again. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to work on before I call it quits for the day is working his 360. This is what the counterbend leads up to. It used to be that I worked on this first, and I worked on my rollaways first on these big horses, but I have found that if I improve the counterbend, these 360s come a whole lot easier to them. And, you know, when he first starts out, he doesn't necessarily stick a hind leg. That's okay. We're not going to get picky at this point. What I'm looking for is a horse that's moving his front end around, following his nose, and moving his front feet, and then moving out after we get done with the roll. He stuck it that time, and then he picked up a trot going out of it, because here's the deal. We want them to always go faster out of the turn, the roll, whatever, than he went into it. So we come into it at a walk or a trot. We get this nice little roll. He's learning how to keep his feet moving. This is a really, really tough maneuver for these big horses. Crossing over, and then ask him to move out and pick up a lope again. And he's a really, really good sport. We know he's really hot and tired. He's shaking his head. The flies are eating at his face, okay? And they're getting after him. I don't ask for that many strides. I want just enough strides that he knows he has to take a lope. But I also don't want him to go super fast. I don't want him to go turning and burning across the arena either. I do this same exact technique with my speedbred stuff, because the speedbred stuff really wants to go fast, and so I deliberately let them come right back down to a trot after they've picked up a lope, because we're not looking for a bunch of speed here. We're just looking to kind of get the feet moving a little bit quicker than they were. And again, Otis really likes it when you stop, pet and rub on him. You know, he's always turning around and looking for that pet and rub all the time. get a couple nice steps back here. I think these little teeny step backwards like this is gonna just keep on adding deposits to our bank account on softening him through his body to make this nice soft collected backup from him. We do an inside roll where we would normally come like out an opposite lead here, but of course, you know, we got a colt with 10, 11 rides, and we're just going really slow here. He's learning the maneuvers. We take him really slow. We're going to do a 360 here and then walk off again. So like I was saying, anytime we can get a nice little soft backup, couple steps here, couple steps there, that's going to add up to a lot of steps eventually. We don't need to ask for a bunch of steps at first. We don't have to ask him to be perfectly straight at first. We just need him to start thinking about rocking onto that hind end and pulling backwards. So another 360 right here. You know, this is where we get him really focused, really thinking about some work ethic here. You got to pay attention, brother. We're not going to go very many strides before I stop and ask you to do the same thing. Lopes off really nice for me here. We've got a really tired horse, and he's still willing to go for me. Beautiful transition, too. The upward transition that he takes right there was super. He has a really nice stop right here again. I'm able to put him right into a right lead. Don't push too hard. Don't get going too fast. The speed will come. Just remember that, you guys. The speed always comes. And with a guy this size, we're not looking for that kind of speed just yet. You know, when he's 4 or 5 years old, we'll have that kind of speed. But we don't need it right now. We just need a horse that's learning the footwork. And he's willing to go back into his right lead again. He's looking for a stop. We got a really pretty stop there. He kind of locked up a little bit on that front end. Just keep on asking really slowly to come around. He's coming around, listening to that outside leg, holding that back end in place. Trot off again. And he takes off in that right lead for me. And look, it looks like his right side is really his good side right now. You know, he's really strong on this right side for me. I'm going to go ahead and bring him into the center here, ask him for a nice stop in front of the camera. You know, he's looking for it. We got a horse that's looking for stop. I'll take that any day of the week. I get a little bit of backup, and I made the mistake of trying to back up right in front of the camera, and the pivot loses me briefly. I stomp my feet in my stirrups. I step off of him. He knows it's coming, and we call it a day with that. Thanks for watching, you guys. I sure appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and stay tuned for more videos of Otis.